Okay, students, we're going to talk about solving equations. Again, you'll be doing this in 6th grade. Okay, start with simple ones and working our way up here. So all this you should be able to do coming out of middle school. So when a teacher asks you, how do you solve all equations? Who knows the answer already? If you watch one of the earlier videos, I put it on. Reverse PEMDAS or reverse order of operations. Remember, PEMDAS down is order of operations. That's what you use when you only have numbers that you're combining and simplifying. When you have the variable, you solve them for it's reverse PEMDAS. Okay, so we'd add or subtract across, obviously trying to solve for one of the variable. Then we'd multiply and divide, then deal with exponents and parentheses. So that will be a constant question that is asked throughout the year in my class, and you get extra credit opportunities. Not only you say reverse order of operations, but you need to spell PEMDAS correctly, write it just like that, not how you feel like writing it. Okay. All right. So solve each equation. The equation, remember, has an equal sign in it. All these have equal signs in it. Then check your solution. I'm not concerned. Check your solution as far as showing work on that. That would be done in your head or done back on the calculator if you need to. Okay. So a couple things here. Every time you see two signs together, you're going to multiply them together and get down to one sign. Negative, negative is a positive. So you're going to say a plus 6 equals negative 5. Okay, we're solving for the a and 1a only, which it already is 1a. So I need to get rid of this positive 6 to the other side. Okay, now why am I going to move it to the right side? Because the 1a, the coefficient of the variable I'm solving for, is positive. I always want that to be positive. If it was negative, which we'll look at it number 8, we're going to move it to the other side then. We want the variable that we're solving for, the coefficient of it, to be positive. So it's positive in number 7, so it's staying there on the left side. Somebody's moving positive 6 to the other side. Now you should know this also from middle school. How do you move any term across the equal sign? Do the opposite operation. So the opposite of positive is negative. So we're subtracting 6 from both sides. Okay, so the answer is a equals negative 11. Remember, integers, they're the same sign. You add them and keep the same sign. So 5 plus 6 is 11. Same sign is negative. Okay, if I want to check that, I could check that in my head. I have negative 11 plus 6 is negative 5, correct. All right, so number 8 now, as I told you, if the coefficient that we're solving for is negative, as it is here, we're going to move it to the other side to make it positive. So automatically do the opposite operation. It makes it positive. That's the whole point, which means the constant is moving to the other side because we got to have the variable by itself. The opposite of negative 8 is plus 8. For those of you who are not good, meaning A or B student, not doing this stuff well, then you need to write out every single step. You don't skip a single step. It's amazing that the better students write down all the steps and the weaker students try to skip steps. If anything, it should be the exact opposite. The better students should be the ones skipping steps. The weaker students write down every single step. Okay, so we have x equals, now notice you have a negative 2 and an 8. Now, I'm going to be asking you what's the smart way of saying that. The smart way is not to say negative 2 plus 8. The smart way is to say 8 minus 2, and a second grader can answer that question. 8 minus 2 is 6. Whenever you have one positive and one negative, you're always going to put the positive out front and say it first. So 8 minus 2, 6. Okay. Again, 10, we see two negatives. We're going to change it to a positive. The e is positive, so we're going to leave it there, move it across, move the constant of 26 across. The opposite of plus 26 is minus 26. And 41 minus 26, because that's a smart way of saying it, because we say the positive one first when there's a positive and a negative. 41 minus 26 is 15. So E equals 15. Okay, let's see. I'm going to erase all this now. That's the nice thing with the video. You can always rewind it and go back to catch anything you missed. We're going to write down. Now we're going to look at this section, 19 through 24. Okay. Again, we want to go ahead and notice that A, the coefficient is -1. So it's negative. So I'm going to move it to the other side to make it positive, which is I'm going to subtract that across. So I have 7/10 minus 1/2 equals 1A, or just A. Now, as I showed you in another video, if I don't want to have to deal with fractions, I can clear the fractions by multiplying by the common denominator. What is the common denominator, or the lowest common denominator of 10 and 2? It is 10, also called the LCM, the lowest or least common multiple. Okay, now I distribute the 10 through each term. Remember, these are called terms separated by plus or minus signs. Okay, so 10 divided by 10 is 1 times 7 is 7. Minus sign. 10 divided by 2 is 5 times 1 is 5. And 10 times A is 10A. Now my fractions are gone. 7 minus 5 is 2. Nice and easy. Equals 10A. The opposite of multiplication is division. And you cannot leave it like this. If you leave it like this, you get -1. Why? Because the fraction is not simplified. You must always simplify everything in high school. Your middle school teacher might have let you get away with not simplifying, not in high school. You must simplify everything. So the answer is 1/5. Okay, let's look at 23. Okay, now this one has a mixed number with it. So before I can distribute, I want to go ahead and, well, the easier way to do it is to first convert it to an improper fraction. 16 times 1 is 16, plus 7 is 23. 16ths plus S equals 9/8. What is the common denominator, or least common multiple? 16. Now, if I were to use 32, another number that can still work, I would just have to reduce the fraction at the end. If I choose the least common multiple, there's a good chance I won't have to do any simplifying at the end, but if at most one step of it. So we distribute through each term, say the correct terminology. And I know your middle school teacher have been using that, and some of you haven't been paying attention to it. You're going to hear the same words again. If you want to sound smart, you learn the math vocabulary and use it. All right, so 16 divided by 16 is 1 times 23 is 23. Plus 16 times S is 16S. And 16 divided by 8 is 2 times 9 is 18. My coefficient for the S is positive, so I keep it on this side. So that means I'm subtracting the 23 across. The opposite of plus 23 is -23. So now I have 16S equals -5. Last step, opposite of multiplication is division. You're always dividing by the coefficient of the variable. And the coefficient is only as a number in front of the variable. Okay, so the weaker students still haven't figured that out, and they will sometimes divide by -5 on both sides. Wrong. You still haven't learned. You've been taught since 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. You divide by the coefficient of the variable, not anything else. We want to solve for 1s. 1s is -5/16. Okay, now you don't have to put that 1 there. You can just say s is -5/16. Okay. All right, so that gets you out of having to deal with fractions, okay, by clearing the fractions. All right, let's go down here, this section, with fractions. Let's say number 10. Remember, I'm solving for 1x, not 2/5 x, so I multiply whatever fraction, I multiply by the reciprocal. Make sure you use the correct terminology. And those all cancel out, so you get 1x, or x equals. Now, I look for cross canceling here, so I can simplify it. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 2 times. 5 and 7 don't cross cancel, and 2 and 7 vertically don't. Remember, you can never horizontally cancel, only diagonally or vertically. So I get 2 times 5 is 10 over 7 times 1 is 7, 10 sevenths. And in high school, you can leave it in improper fraction. You do not have to change to a mixed number. Okay. 11, let's say, or 12, let's say. Okay, when I have a mixed number, I'm going to change it to an improper fraction first. So 7.5 is 15 halves, right? 2 times 7 plus 1 is 15 halves equals -5/9. Or, so I multiply by the reciprocal, -9/5. Multiply by -9/5 on both sides. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side. Now I get 1r on the left, which is what I'm solving for. And I look to cross cancel again. Notice 5, cancel the 5 once, 5 goes into 15 3 times. There's no vertical canceling with 3 and 2, and there's no cross canceling with 2 and -9. So now I just multiply straight across. 3 times -9 is -27, and 2 times 1 is 2. So you can leave it as -27 halves, that's how you pronounce that, or -13.5. If you put in your calculator, it's going to give you -13.5. Okay, but when there's a mixed number, you must first then change it to an improper fraction, and then do it. Okay. Another thing I want to point out: when you have a proportion, remember a fraction that equals a fraction, or a ratio that equals a ratio is called a proportion. Several of you still haven't memorized your basic vocabulary from 6th, 7th, 8th grade. You need to get it memorized. I can either cross multiply. It's your butterfly, that sometimes people will say, instead of equal each other. Or, since these are numbers in the denominator, I can multiply by the common denominator to get rid of my fractions. What's the common denominator between 6 and 12? 12. So I distribute that through each term, and I get 2z equals -5. Okay, because 12 divided by 12 is 1 times -5 is -5. And then the last step would be divide by 2, and I get -5 halves. Okay, so that's one way, again, of clearing fractions. I can multiply that. You may or may not have been taught that way in middle school. It's just another way. I could have cross multiplied. Now, when this negative here, here's the one thing to remember: this. That negative is not in both the numerator and the denominator. It's in one or the other. You have to put it in one or the other. So I usually like to put it with the numerator. So that if I cross multiply, I use the butterfly method. 12z equals -5 times 6, -30. Then I have to divide by 12, and now I have to simplify -30/12. The GCF is 6. I divide each by 6, I get -5 halves. But remember, when I did it the other way, by multiplying by the common denominator, I got rid of those fractions. I didn't have to worry about reducing that -30/12. Some of you still can't simplify a simple fraction from 4th grade. Okay, and so again, if you clear the fractions by multiplying by the common denominator, or one of them, then you have less to have to work with fractions wise. Okay, another way. So I'm showing you all these ways so you can then choose. Okay, in high school, I don't tell you have to do it one way. Another way is I can say 6, again, that negative is going to go there. 6 goes into 12, how many times? 2. So that means I multiply this by 2. So that means 2z equals -5. And then divide by 2, and I get my -5 halves that way. That's another shortcut that you can do with proportions. Okay, if it happens to go in evenly like that. Okay, that one worked. Okay. Now, just so you know, I could have actually gone the other way. I could have said, okay, how do I get from 12 to 6? I divide by 2. So divide by 2. So I must divide by 2 here. So it's -5 divided by 2, -5 halves, or -2.5, and that equals the z. So in one direction I did multiplication, so the other one I did division. Okay, so just so you know, that's another way. Okay, 17 here. You want to see how many decimals there are. 1, 2, 3, 4 places. So I'm going to multiply by 1 with 4 zeros, 10,000. So since, and I'm just sharing it to both of them. So then move 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives me point B. So let's go one more. 5. Gives me B now. Move at 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 19,580. Oh, sorry, that equaled 22B now. 22B equals 19,580 unless that divided by 22. Okay, now that I just say put in a calculator. But you gotta remember that you can multiply by that to move the decimal. Okay, now I could have, if I'm giving a calculator away, boom, I could just divide by the 0.0022 on both sides. Okay, and that would give me that same answer. Let's see. When there's a mix, when there's a fraction and a decimal, change them both to one or the other. Either both the fractions or both the decimals, your choice, and then deal with it there. So that'd be negative 73/4 equals 2.5 is 2.5, which now is 5/2 x. Now I need to multiply by the reciprocal, 2/5. 2/5. And there's a cross cancel in there, 1 and 2. And so I get negative 73 tenths, or as a decimal, negative 7.3. Okay. So there you go with that one. All right. Those were one step. Okay, now let's go to two step here. Again, how do we solve all equations? Reverse PEMDAS. It doesn't change. Okay. So again, remember, now this may help you for those who struggle and solving equations aren't good with this already. Again, hopefully you've gone through middle school, but that's using A or B student. Everybody else struggles with it. So remember, I'm trying to get x by itself. So what numbers do I have with x? I have a negative 5. And what's the opposite of negative 5 to move it across? Positive 5. So I could put a plus sign there. And that says 2x, which means 2 times x. What's the opposite of times? Division. So you might want to go ahead and those who struggle, write those down like that. So now I can look over at my reverse PEMDAS here, and it tells me which one to do first, add or subtract. I have add right there. So I'm going to add that 5 across, and I have 2x equals 8. Now remember, I left the x on the left side because that coefficient in front of the x, which is 2, is positive. If it was negative, I'd be moving it to the other side. On this page, number 4, we'll do that one next. That one's negative. All the rest here and 10 are the only ones, and 11 looks like the only ones are negatives. All right, so last step is division. You see here, divide by 2. And so x equals 4. Okay, so you've got what the steps are, the plus and the division. Now you just got to look at the reverse PEMDAS to make sure you do which one first. Add or subtract first. So we added the 5, then went up to multiply and divide. We had a division. Okay, you may have to combine like terms first. 5s plus 4s is 9s equals negative 72. Now divide by 9. And s equals negative 8. Okay, so you might have to combine like terms first. Now let's go ahead and look at, like I said, we'll do 5. I'm going to look, first thing I'm looking at is my coefficient of the variable I'm solving for. Here's my variable I'm solving for. My coefficient is negative 3, so that's negative. I'm moving that entire thing to the other side. Okay, I'm going to actually show you a couple ways of doing this problem. A couple of the ways that I would only recommend. So I'm moving that across, which means I'm moving the constant to the left. So the opposite of minus 24 is plus 24. By the way, some of you still haven't realized, even though your teachers told you this in middle school, that minus and negative are the same thing. Negative 24 versus minus 24 mean the same thing. All right, so now I have 3c on the right equals negative 24 minus 9 is negative 33. And last step, divide by 3, and c is negative 11. Okay, we don't want to ever have to divide by negatives because that messes up more things along the way, or bring down negatives with our coefficients, as we would have had to do if there for the left the negative 3c on the left side and just added the 9 across. More chance for error. The goal is to lower your chances for error. Okay, so negative 11 is our answer. Another thing I could have done, I could have looked at each of these terms and I could see they all have a negative 3 in common. So I could divide each term by negative 3. So I can do it. Each one divides in evenly. I can divide each by negative 3. Okay, and that's going to give me c plus 3 equals 8. And now, oh, dang it, I blew it on the last one. I did negative 24. Okay, so before I do that, let's go back. That's a good thing I checked doing it this way because I found my error. Plus 24. I think I must have wrote plus 24 and wrote minus 24 over here. Should have been plus 24, not 25. Okay, and remember I added that across. So I have 3c equals 24 minus 9 is 15. Last step, divide by 3, and you get c equals 5. So 5 is the answer, not negative 11. I wrote 24, positive 24 on one side and negative 24. You never can do that. Error. Okay, whatever you do to one side, you must do the other side. So the answer is 5. Okay, now I could have, like I just got done saying, I could see they each have a negative 3 in common and divide by negative 3 right away. And then I get c plus 3 equals 8. And last step, subtract 3 across. And I get my c equals 5 that way. So that's even a shorter way of doing it. Okay, so just know, but if you're going to do that, it has to divide evenly by all the terms. So I would not do that on number 6 because there's no number that 5 or negative 7 and 52 all have in common. You know, you got to have a GCF in common besides 1. Okay. All right, let's go down to the bottom down here. Like that, I could multiply both sides, both equations by 8. So on the left side, that 8's gone. I have 5f plus 1 equals 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. Subtract the 1 across. And the reason I'm doing that is because the 5 is positive for the coefficient, and I get negative 25. And last step, divide by 5, and I get negative 5 equals f. Okay, should have learned all this in middle school. So this is a quick review. Okay, now let's say I want to, on 20, I want to get rid of the fraction. I don't want to have to deal with those fractions. So what it is, remember that's over 1 and that's over 1. So the GCF is 7, or at least common multiple is 7. So multiply each term by 7. Draw your arrows so you don't forget to do it for every term. You might want to draw one arrow at a time. Okay, so I have 7 divided by 7 is 1 times 2a is 2a. 7 times 9 is 63. And 7 times 3 is 21. This coefficient of the a is positive, so I'm going to leave the a on the left side. So that means I'm subtracting the 63 across. And so now I have 2a equals negative 42. And the last step, divide by 2. A equals negative 21. Okay, so that's how you can deal with those. Okay, let's come over here. Complement of each angle. Complement, just so you know, are two angles. That's the angle symbol. That's a comma S for plural. Two angles that add to 90 degrees. And you need to know this in geometry anyway. So you're just learning it now if you haven't heard it before. This is right at the very beginning of geometry. Okay, so that means 15 plus some variable x equals 90. I just solve it. So just subtract the 15 across. X equals 75. Okay. Now on 4, if I have a plus x equals 90, I'm solving for x, and I subtract the a across, I get 90 minus a. So the complement of a is 90 minus a. Okay. So you can just say plus x on each one of these equals 90, and then move the given term across. Supplement two angles that add to 180. Now, just so you know, I'm going to quiz you on this in geometry the first day of class, possibly. See who knows, who watched these videos, and who remembered their vocab and get extra credit. I ask extra credit questions on vocab and formulas throughout the year. So those who have memorized it, memorize your and terminology as well. So as I was saying, who can tell me the names of these terms that you've already learned here in middle school, see who remembers them for high school will get extra credit. So again, watch these videos, take notes on the terminology as well. So that plus x equals 180. Subtract that across. So minus parentheses b minus 15. Now don't forget I need to distribute this negative through here. So that's minus b plus 15. Okay, now I need to combine like terms. 180 plus 15 is 195 minus b is my answer. That's the complement. Okay, find the measure of the third angle of each triangle, which the measure of the two angles of the triangle are given. So again, we can call a third angle x. Remember, all three angles of a triangle add to 180. So triangle sum theorem is what it's called. Triangle sum theorem, TH for theorem. All the sum of the three angles of a triangle is 180. You need to know that. You should have been taught that from elementary school onward. Okay, and so again, if I took this, for example, call it plus x equals 180, I can say plus x. So I'm solving for x, the third angle. I subtract the a and the b across, minus a and minus b, minus a and minus b. So that's what it is. 180 minus a minus b would be the third angle. Okay. All right, down here, solve each equation, then check it. Let's go ahead and pick 10 and 11 here. Okay, so again, I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying here. So you do it how I teach you. This is the smartest way. I ask myself, I'm only looking at the variables. And I ask myself, which variable is bigger? Which coefficient of the variable is bigger? 7. So that means I'm moving everything to this side. The variables to this side, the constants to the other. So I'm just going to subtract across there. And I'm moving the constant to the other side, which is opposite of plus, to subtract there. Okay, now you can sit there and show the steps below. I'm just doing my head. 7x minus 3x is 4x on the right side. And negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12. And last step, divide by 4. I always want to be dividing by a positive, so I don't end up blowing answers. Okay, check that. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, minus 5 is negative 14 on the left side. And negative 21 plus 7 is negative 14 on the right side. So that's true. So X is correct. Okay. Number 11, we have dealt with decimals. So I have decimals, so I have it 0.1. I have 1 decimal to the right, so I'm going to multiply everything by 10, all the terms, the entire equation by 10. So now I have 19s plus 60 equals 31 minus 10s. Now no decimals. Now I ask myself again what the variables next. 19s and negative 10s, which one's smaller? Negative 10 is. So I'm moving the negative 10 across. So I'm adding 10s. 19s plus 10s is 29s, which means the constant is going the other way. 31 minus 60 is negative 29. And the last step is divide by 29. So you get negative 1. Any number divided by itself is 1. And then a negative or a positive is negative. Okay. So that's dealing with decimals. So on 12, you multiply the entire equation by 100 because you have 2 decimal places to the right. Okay. Let's do number 21. I want to get rid of the fractions. So I'm going to multiply by the LCM, least common multiple. What's the least common multiple of 2 and 3? It's 6. So I'm multiplying every term by 6. Get rid of the fractions. 6 divided by 2 is 3 times x is 3x. 6 divided by 3 is 2 times 1 is 2. 6 divided by 3 is 2 times x is 2x. Minus 6 divided by 2 is 3 times 1 is 3. So I'm subtracting that across because, again, the smaller one goes to the bigger side, so I always end up with a positive. And therefore, my constant is being added across there. So 3x minus 2x is 1x, and adding the 2 across, 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And I'm done. Okay. I think I've covered, last one that can be a shortcut. Let's look at number 4. Most people and most teachers will teach you to distribute that negative 3 through there. You do not have to do that because that says negative 3 times, that quantity opposite of times is division, and negative 3 divides into negative 18 evenly. This is the only reason I would do this, because it divides evenly. If it didn't divide evenly, I would distribute a property. Okay, so now I'm left with just x plus 2 on the left equals negative 18 divided by negative 3 is positive 6. Last step, subtract 2 across, and you get x equals 4. Okay, so that's another shortcut. You could do that on number 1 as well. You can divide each by 6. You do it on number 2, you can divide each by 7. Number 3, you can divide each by 3. So this gives you, in this section, gives you a chance to practice different ways of solving for x. Find the smartest way of solving for x. Okay. Last one is literal equations here. Literal equations is when it's an equation, which of course has an equal sign. And the reason I'm writing that down is because you could then type in Google or YouTube how to solve literal equations, and they will go through steps of another video doing what I'm doing here, just with different equations. So solve a literal equation. Again, it's an equation you're solving, so you still use reverse PEMDAS. That never changes. Okay, how do you solve all equations? Reverse PEMDAS. I better hear that over and over. Okay. And so I'm still using the reverse PEMDAS. It just has a lot more variables involved, not just numbers like we've had before. So in this case, it's solve each equation for x. So I'm solving this for x. Again, I look at the coefficient of the x. It's positive, so I'm going to leave it on the left side. And so that means I need to subtract, get the r to the other side. So the opposite of plus is minus. So I'm minusing r. So that is what x equals, q minus r. Okay, let's say number 5. Solve for x. So notice I have a plus y I have to get rid of, and a divided by c I have to get rid of. Okay. Now, remember, you might think, oh, subtraction comes first. I subtract y. But don't forget, when I have more than one term in either the numerator or the denominator, I put parentheses around it. So that really has a parentheses there. And so remember, parentheses up here at the top. So that's going to be the last one I'm doing. Here, it says that divided by c. So what's the opposite of divided by? Times. So cancel that out. And now I have x plus y equals cd. And now the last step is to subtract the y across. So x equals cd minus y. Okay, that's your answer. So it really, literal equations really make you understand the reverse PEMDAS process. You can't now just take your answer and plug it back in and have all these nice numbers to check. Now, the one tricky part on this is when you have a problem like 17. When you have two x, an x in two different terms, okay, in your equation. All the other places here, x is only in one term. Okay, this one has two, so this is the tricky one. I need to first get my x's to the same side. So that means I'm going to either move that across, or I could just go ahead and subtract that across and leave the a there. So I have a equals bx minus cx. Okay, so now the x are on the same side first. Now we have to do reverse assured property. Now, what I like and what I call it is when you think you're stuck, remember this phrase always. When in doubt, which you're in doubt because you don't know how do I do that. When in doubt, factor out. When in doubt, factor out. So remember, you only can factor out things that are in common. So both these terms have an x in common. So I can take the x out of each term and I'm left with then b minus c equals a. Okay, so that says x times the quantity b minus c. So the opposite of times is division. So I'm dividing by b minus c on both sides. They cancel out. So x equals a divided by the quantity b minus c. If you want to put that in parentheses, you can. Oftentimes they won't put it in parentheses. But if you like to, so it stays exactly the same, that's fine. Okay, now you wouldn't put it, if it was like decast test, you wouldn't put it in parentheses. There you have a long, they'd have it, like a division bar for you put the a in the top and you put b minus c in the denominator only. Okay. And that does it. So that gives you the basics on solving for x. 37